And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it. And that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon Wright. Tonight we're going to be joined by my guest, Easton Hawk, here live in the studio. We're going to be diving into some of the topics about the Mothman. You may know Easton from being an illustrator. He's got all these artworks hanging up on my wall here. Were drawn by him. Make sure to check those out if you haven't. If you've seen the live streams or anything, you've seen the new artwork in the studio. That's been drawn by Easton. We've been talking back and forth for a long time. We've known each other outside of podcasting from band era. So it's been a few years since we've been knowing each other, but we've been talking about this for a while to get him on here and talk about the Mothman. So I'm definitely looking forward to doing that. But before we bring him on, if you've ever had an experience and you would like to be on an episode of Tinfoil Tales, you can send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Just make sure to reach out and get a message to me, and we'll get something scheduled for a future episode. If you'd like to help the podcast out, I ask you to please share it around. Word of mouth helps the podcast grow, and the more the podcast grows, there's more people finding out about it, which basically means there's potential new guests to come on there and share their experiences with me. And if you've been sharing it around, just know I appreciate you guys. You can also leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts at. That helps with the rankings. If you happen to write one out, I'll try and make sure to read it on an upcoming episode. You can also help out by joining the Patreon and becoming a member. There's a free membership and a paid membership. Make sure to check that out. Be sure to follow me around on social media. Look for Brandon Tinfoil Tales on Facebook. That's where I'm most active. But now we're going to go ahead and jump on into the conversation with Easton. Really looking forward to it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guest tonight, Easton Hawk. Thanks for coming on here and talking with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are the second person that gets to record in my barn, studio, whatever you want to call it.
It's cozy in here.
Yeah. I do enjoy it. It's out of the house. It's a little bit different than...
It's your own space.
Yeah. It's like, you got a man cave. It's like, it's not a man cave.
Yeah, it's a battle station.
It's my little, I call it the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Going out to the rabbit hole. So when people have been giving me stickers, or I got stickers from like gear or whatever, I've been sticking it to the door, and I have all your artwork up on the wall behind. So for anyone that sees live videos and they see up here all of the cryptid artwork, it is drawn by Mr. Hawk here. So definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to let the audience know a little bit more about yourself before we dive into it?
Sure. Yeah, I am Easton Hawk. I'm an illustrator from here in Indiana. I mostly focus on folkloric stories, cryptids. Then I also like to fuse it with my love for classic sci-fi movie posters, and most of these stories in the heyday of ufology comes from the 60s and 70s. So I feel like it only made sense to blend the media, cultural things that were going on at the time too.
Yeah. I think like a lot of that stuff, if you go back into it, it seems like it, not so much the 40s, but like the 50s into the 60s was like a heyday for all that stuff.
Sure. But especially, I guess I'm going off of like the Bigfoot boom in the 60s is definitely where suddenly everybody and their brother was seeing, or, they had a story from 10 years prior and stuff like that. But yeah, the saucer mania that came out of the 40s and 50s and then turned into Bigfoot mania. And, now we got a blend today.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I've been looking into things here and there, but like I've always thought it was funny because the depictions of gray aliens and then the actual depictions of what people say Wendigos look like.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
pale crawlers and your goblins, they're always like these.
Yeah, there's like an archetype
Yeah.
of, we're afraid of skinny, long, pale or, pitch black figures. So
Right.
psychologically, I think,
That's like in the mindset for something we're like terrified of it.
right. Well, I just saw Alien Romulus last night finally, and like, the Xenomorph's like the perfect
Mm-hmm.
fictional creature design. So and that just goes back to, gaunt,
Mm-hmm.
long, Slender Man is such a big phenomenon now. So I don't know. There's definitely some sort of primal fear that's tapped into with long-limbed,
Yeah.
tall man.
For me, it's always been my love of obviously Godzilla and King
Yeah,
Kong.
right.
I've been the big giant monster fan, but that's something that's always interested me is like monsters in general, like Bigfoot. Even as a kid, loved Bigfoot,
Oh,
loved
yeah.
aliens, loved all that type of stuff. Never really believed in it,
Yeah, right.
but
I still
loved it.
I still don't know if I believe in it. It's definitely a want and a need, but I'm still not fully convinced.
That's kind of how I am. Like, I believe people are seeing something, but I don't necessarily know what it
Yeah,
is.
that's where I'm at. I don't think all these people are just seeing owls and, misidentifying creatures that they're familiar with. So there's definitely something going on, but also in all my research, I think that it's a lot of co-production with your own mind and psyche and experiences and
Hmm.
something like that. There has to be some sort of personal element into
Yeah.
each thing.
I think like, and I've mentioned this before, like, I feel like sometimes things are so traumatic with people, the mind has a way of covering it up.
Oh, definitely.
Like that's the way to cope with it or something. Like,
Well, one of my favorite paranormal avenues is stone tape theory. Are you familiar with stone tape theory?
no,
It's the idea that natural elements that occur on Earth have the ability to essentially record like reel to reel record
Mhm.
traumatic and emotionally exhaustive events and
Okay.
replay them. So that's a lot of like wartime stuff. Civil War, Gettysburg has a lot of
Hmm.
where it's not a intelligent haunting. It's just a like blip in time that replays exactly what happened at that moment.
Yeah.
So I'm really into that kind of avenue of thinking where, you know, uh, if enough if enough, exhaustive, stressful energy is put out, either something picks it up or your mind in that moment kind of, going into like the DMT like pineal gland like
Mhm.
thing that everybody talks about at this point. Just like there has to be something in your mind that kind of goes on autopilot and tries to make sense of whatever's going on.
Yeah. That's something I've never messed with and I don't particularly plan to, but everyone's like, oh, you need to try it.
You
Or
know,
whatever. Like,
At one point I was really into the idea of, because excuse me, I also am really interested in out of body experiences and near death experiences, and that's like as close as you can get without mortally wounding yourself.
yeah.
So it sounded interesting, but I also am a person that likes to be firmly like on the ground and have my agency, and so it's just not something that I want to willingly put myself into at this point.
I'm a paranoid person in general. So I
Exactly.
think,
I've never had fun while inebriated.
no,
So,
I'm allergic to mushrooms.
did you
So,
find that out?
well, I know I'm allergic to penicillin, which is
Okay,
made from
okay.
the fungus or whatever, but my dad's allergic to mushrooms. So I just assumed because he's allergic to penicillin too, why risk it?
Yeah, definitely.
So-
It's not worth it.
I say I'm allergic to mushrooms, but I'm not 100% quote unquote certain of it.
Yeah.
But if I was to ever try that, just being afraid of knowing that I could be allergic,
Yeah, sure. That's going to ruin
it's going to
everything.
ruin. I'm going to have a terrible trip.
Yeah,
just
I'm already
because.
a pretty naturally paranoid person also. So giving, like I said, not having my full agency and feeling like I'm in complete control of whatever's happening at that moment is what's going to sway my brain into having the worst time of my life.
Yeah. So for me, I'm not doing it. There's just no reason to. But that's neither here nor there. So what do you plan on talking here with me tonight?
Yeah, we've been trying to schedule for like a year now, talking
Mhm.
about Mothman,
Yeah.
Mothman in general, both the Point Pleasant and the Chicago sightings.
Right.
And it felt like a pretty good time where Mothman Festival is next month, and Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix just released a Chicago Mothman episode.
Right.
So figured we'd scratch the surface of that pretty much.
Before we do, what led you into of all the one like Mothman? Because for me, like I've known you outside of this, so I followed you when you started with your artwork and everything. But like Mothman was like one of the first ones I remember you doing.
Yeah.
Man.
I think so. Originally, I was raised on the original Robert Stack Unsolved Mysteries,
Right.
And what really pulled me into all those like high strangeness stuff was finding a copy of it's called Strange Stories and Amazing Facts. It's a Reader's Digest book from like the 70s or 80s.
Right.
I found a copy of that in my grandma's basement, and I kept it and I read it, and it was full of, you know, plenty of like Fortean, just like strange occurrences. But then it also had a monster section. It was all, you know, the big four, like Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, Mothman, Jersey Devil. It had all that kind of stuff. And Mothman specifically, I thought was really interesting, especially when I started jumping into it as I got older and I read the Mothman prophecies and I, you know, saw the movie with my dad and all that. That's the story that I have the most faith in that it happened, because it's just so far reaching. And then also realizing that Mothman isn't even like the most interesting like component in that story. There's so much going on that it's like it's a cool feature of it, but I think the Men in Black stuff is what really pulled me into that story, just with how far reaching and how strange and just like.
Then there's the Indrid Cold aspect.
Yeah, and the Indrid Cold, whether or not it's connected, is such a strange, you know, like red herring story with Woody Derenberger. So Mothman, I think it has the most going on that makes me believe that something was definitely happening.
It's strange because before I knew anything about Mothman, I watched the Mothman prophecies, and I watched it pretty sure in the theater. So that kind of, I think me and my girlfriend went and seen it. So that kind of outs me at how old I really am.
Yeah. I was 7 years old when it came out.
I was probably like 16 or 17, but we went and saw it in the theater, or I either rented it when it came. It was one of the two. I just remember I watched it with an ex-girlfriend, and I got looking into it afterwards because it said based on true.
Right.
And I started researching. I was like, well, shit, I didn't know this happened. Like, I never didn't know anything about it. I just thought it was like a creepy movie.
Right.
Like, and
I actually rewatched it maybe 3 weeks ago. And I guess, you know, I'm immersed in all this stuff, but for me, I thought it still holds up. Like, it's definitely a movie that couldn't be made today because there's no like fight sequence with the Mothman. There's no like, you know, Marvel-esque showdown, but I like the, you know, the answer is there's no answer at all, like theme to it all.
I just don't think, like what you said, today's audience wouldn't find it as interesting. Like the younger, if I tried to show my kids, they would have no interest in it.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, especially at the time, you know, Richard Gere was such a big name to be thrown into a high strangeness movie. So I definitely think it was like a flash in the pan type thing where we'll probably never get that again. But Mark Pellington, who directed it, is working on a Mothman like mini series. Apparently, I don't know where it'll stream, but he was at like Erie, Pennsylvania con or something like that, and he was talking about he's got more Mothman coming down the pipe.
Nice. I wonder if he'll be at this year's festival.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. But it's also, you know, I've been doing it. I've been a festival goer for about 6 years, and I've been vending it the last 2 years. And it's post-COVID, it's like bigger than ever. There's 25,000 people in a town of, I think, 3,600 for, you know, 3 days. And it is overwhelming. So if he is there, I don't know if I would ever like, rub elbows with him.
Right.
It's just too many people.
Off topic, but you mentioned how many people, and I just saw today that the first annual Bigfoot conference we were talking about, it is at the end of the month of September, and they're sold out.
Holy shit.
Yeah. They just announced today that they've sold out of all.
This is the first one?
The first one, yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't know how many tickets there were, but the fact that it sold out, kind of amazing.
I mean, that is like prime country for that, because I actually did my first like Squatch hunt at the end of May, down in Brown County, and I didn't see anything. It was like the weekend before Memorial Day, and I didn't think that the place would be flooded with people, but they had, a car show and like marathons, and I was like, well, this is like the worst time to be hunting for Sasquatch, but yeah, I was down in that neck of the woods, so that's like, and I always forget how huge Brown County is.
Yeah.
It's just, it's like 26 square miles, I think,
Yeah.
and that's not even the whole of the Hoosier National Forest, but
that's just their little area that they have in their section. But
right.
I like to go down there in general just because of the little shops and everything. I think it's like such a nice
It's an
little
idyllic
place.
little place. I did Hocking Hills Bigfoot Festival a couple weeks ago, and it's kind of set up the same as Mothman. It's in Logan, Ohio, and they shut down, like 6 blocks. And they were, I didn't believe it as soon as they said it, but they were saying that they're expecting about 50,000 people, and there was probably maybe 13,000, but they're also there for Hocking Hills, not just for a Bigfoot convention. But
Yeah.
it's I don't know. But these events pop up everywhere now, in every state, I've noticed.
I just interviewed your episode. This episode will come out first, but I just interviewed the other day the couple that's setting up the Crawfordsville Paranormal Convention. They claim they have like thousands of people responded to that one already too.
I believe it. Like I think I hopped in with this like niche right on time because I'm a musician. You're a musician. Up until the pandemic and music slowed down, I was doing flyers and band shirts and album art nonstop, and then everything kind of came to a halt, and I was like, oh my god, I can finally work on stuff that I actually want to work on, which is how I got the cryptid series started. And it's like I said, it's just year after year there's a new event popping up in the most random places by the most random people. But
I saw you at that one down the street here, the ParaUnity, and that's where I bought the
Kentucky Goblins.
The Kentucky Goblins, the first one from you, and I was like, man, I watched Hellier. You know about the Kentucky Goblins. Like, I thought that was very obscure, and like I didn't know you had that connection.
Right. And then I just listened to your episode with Lucky Sutton's daughter. Yeah. So and they have a Little Green Men festival or something down there, but I don't know if it's worth worth my driving.
The Kelly Green Men.
Yeah. And we have Turtle Days up in Churubusco.
I just learned that the other day.
Yeah, it's I scouted it out to vend also, but it seems like it's more of like a street fair, and it's not really about the Beast of Busco. It's just about like turtles celebration.
Yeah.
So
someone said they do like turtle races or whatever.
Yeah,
I was
they do
like,
turtle races, and everybody's got turtle Sundays and shit, but it's not as cryptid focused as I wanted it to be.
That's why I was curious about doing the ParaUnity, because that was the first time I ever heard of it, and that was the first time I'd ever been there. And I saw you there, and I got that picture. Then I ended up vending 2 years ago, and I had vended last year. Now this year they asked me to vend, but I'm also being a speaker.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I'm on the waiting list. It was okay the first year. They're definitely more in the ghost hunting, that kind of stuff, and that's not really my thing. So, but same demographic usually.
So yeah, I am usually the oddball there because I'm more of the monster alien type of thing.
Which is funny. In this lane, I've noticed that like UFO people disparage ghost people, and ghost people disparage Bigfoot people, and there's people who focus on just one like facet of it when to a degree it's all kind of connected.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to explain to people, and they get so mad. They're like, this can't be true. I was like, okay.
Well, I mean, it all goes back to, mortality and after, and any semblance of an afterlife. Like all of this stuff kind of gets very philosophical when you get, down to the basic components of it.
That's why I don't understand why people get so upset and want to argue about it. And then the thing that cracks me up the most is you have, when it comes to the people that believe in these cryptid like encounters or whatever, they think Bigfoot is a flesh and blood creature. Then you got the people that believe in the woo side of it, where it has some sort of supernatural
that was one of the things at Hocking Hills. I don't have any Bigfoot designs. Like I've got some stuff in the works, but I'm not a Bigfoot guy when it comes down to it. And everybody would come up and be like, no Bigfoot, just Mothman stuff. And I was like, I really couldn't give less of a shit about Bigfoot unless it's like UFO portal jumping Bigfoot, that's interesting. But like when I think of it in the grand scheme of cryptids, would anything change if we found Bigfoot? If like it, unless it can speak like perfect English to us, I don't see Bigfoot really changing anything.
If I see a Bigfoot out in the open and he flips me off, then I'll be like, all
Yeah,
right.
like if there's yeah, exactly. So if it's beyond being just an animal that's really good at, being elusive, I just don't see anything changing other than us adding a new species to the books.
I want to believe like the Patterson Gimlin footage to me has always been like the holy grail of
Oh, yeah.
Bigfoot stuff because even today's standards, they cannot
Yes,
disprove
and
it.
we just keep getting better, like,
More-
tracking images of it and everything. So
They're like, oh, now you can see muscle movement. Now
Yeah.
it's a female because it has breasts. I'm
right,
like,
which is the best. If it is a hoax, that is the best, like, just the best little detail that you could throw
Yeah.
in to make it
A
just so, weirdly believable.
mhm. Which even today they can't make
Right.
the suit. They've
Yeah,
tried to like
exactly.
this was back in the 60s.
Yeah,
two
68,
cowboy guys.
57,
Yeah,
somewhere in there. So
two cowboys tried to make
Which,
this.
I mean, I do get it because Roger Patterson was a known like grifter, and he was like kind of a get rich quick
Yeah.
guy, and he was there specifically to get footage of Bigfoot. So I understand all of that around it to where you'd want to try and debunk it. But I mean, when it comes down to it, you can't do anything. You can't dispute it scientifically, and you can't debunk it just from the video.
Yeah.
It's been analyzed almost as much as the Zapruder film, so it's you'd think that you could nip it in the bud pretty quick with how many eyes have been on it and how many
But there's more
forensic
questions than
evidence.
anything.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, Mothman.
Yeah.
I assume most everybody that listens to your show is familiar with Mothman, but we can give a quick rundown of
Yeah.
the events. So, like the most cut and dry
Aspect to it.
yeah, rundown of Mothman is November of 1966. Two couples were necking essentially down at the abandoned TNT plant outside of Point Pleasant, and noticed a man-sized bird with man legs and a huge wingspan and piercing red eyes just kind of sitting in front of them. When they started to like focus in on it, it raised into the air, and they got spooked, so they started racing back to town. They claimed that they were hitting about 100 miles an hour, but this thing kept up with them. They went straight to the sheriff's office, reported it, did some more investigating, and then that kind of kicked off Mothman Mania, where hundreds of people that reported seeing Mothman came forward. So I assume that, that's only a small portion of people that actually experienced something along those lines. Like I said, the cut and dry story of it is that Mothman kind of terrorized this area and even into like Pennsylvania and the surrounding areas along the Ohio River for about 13 months. And then the Silver Bridge collapsed, which kind of killed everybody's like, vibe. Didn't really want to talk about Mothman after an actual tragedy. So lots of speculation that it's a harbinger of doom. Lots of speculation. It's I've seen like psychopomp theories that it was, trying to warn people that it was happening.
Like an angel of death type.
Right.
People.
Which is,
Yeah.
I said that Mothman's like the least interesting part of the entire thing. People are experiencing missing time. People were experiencing weird like voices in their heads.
Mhm.
They would lots of like numbers. People would hear like random like number sequences voiced down to them. Weird phone calls, Indrid Cold, premonitions, Men in Black. It's kind of a
Did the Men in Black stuff happen before the actual bridge collapse?
yes.
Okay.
So and then a few of the witnesses that were there said that they saw men in black and checkered suits like on the bridge. It's a suspension bridge, so they were like on it. So there's lots of like weird Men in Black conundrums.
Was the Mothman ever seen at the bridge?
I mean, I'm sure people said that they did, but I don't, like in the Mothman prophecies, you see the eyes at the top of the bridge. I don't think that's how it worked.
Mhm.
It was mostly in a nature preserve around that TNT plant that was decommissioned. The Men in Black stuff, I want to say it started up pretty soon because there was plenty of weird lights in the sky, UFO type stuff too,
Mhm.
along, with the missing time aspect of it. There was lots of reported UFO type activity.
So this story is like the one story that has a little bit of everything in it for
Yeah,
everybody.
definitely. It's everything in the kitchen sink.
You've got your cryptid, you have your Men in Black, you have your
Strange premonitions,
strange premonitions, your random UFOs.
John Keel especially was like haunted with they appeared to be false flag premonitions where he was being told that there's going to be a giant blackout across the nation. He was told that the Pope was going to be assassinated. He was told that a chemical plant on the Ohio River was going to explode. He was given like a ton of tidbit information, but it either wasn't in the time frame that he was expecting, so he wrote it off, or it was just kind of to throw him off the scent type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because he would show up at John Keel being the guy that wrote the Mothman prophecies. I should probably mention that, but he would show up at hotels that he had just decided to stay at for the night, and he would show up and he'd have a stack of mail like waiting for him or messages waiting for him. So there's just a lot of like trickster god type stuff going on along with all of the weird stuff.
I saw something about how they claim that he made a lot of that stuff up himself.
I mean, he was a writer. Like beyond being a journalist, he was like a fiction writer. So I could see him kind of coloring it, but I think he had more journalistic integrity than a lot of the other weirdo journalists, especially Gray Barker was another like big player. He wrote a book called The Silver Bridge that came out in 1970, which was 5 years before Keel released Mothman Prophecies, and he was a known hoaxer. I think he believed in the weirdo stuff, but I think it was one of those things where he believed it so much that he wanted everybody else to believe it, so he would actively hoax some phenomena to get people to also research it and believe it as well.
Yeah, I don't know much about either one of them. I've never really looked into the guys themselves, but that was just something I come across that said that Keel was not, they didn't call him a grifter, but they think he embellished a lot of the experience that he was having.
I would probably agree that some of what he was experiencing wasn't as fantastical as it was written, but I would say that there was so much going on that I don't think that he made, I would say 10% if it is a little embellished. I would say 10% out of all of the stuff that he was experiencing.
Because I know basing it off, I don't know how true his book to the movie was, but like he was getting phone calls. Did he have any connection with the Indrid Cold aspect, or is that just what the movie put together?
He did. So no, Indrid Cold was pretty much like a one and done, and it wasn't even connected to Mothman other than just the time period. Because I think the Indrid Cold encounter happened 2 weeks before the couples in the car chase happened, and that kind of took off. But I know Woodrow Derenberger, that had the Indrid Cold encounter, supposedly had contact with Indrid Cold like throughout his entire life, and supposedly even his daughter continued contact. So I don't know how true that is. I don't really believe in any of this stuff, but
So I had an episode that came out as Tales from the Dark. That's a different podcast, but they actually talked about Indrid Cold on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a neat, you can read the transcripts at the Mothman Museum. They have a printed transcript of the entire, because Woody had his experience, and then the next day went down to the radio station and had an interview and gave descriptions and was able to, guess that he's this tall and weighed this much. And it's just, if it is a hoax, it is a very good like world building hoax for him to have, just because of how weird and connected to the Men in Black, just like the way that he described Cold and the way that he described his like speech pattern was very reminiscent of Men in Black. So it goes into uh, is Woody or is Indrid Cold a man in black? Because well, also on top of that, he Indrid Cold described himself as a searcher, so there's also that whole thing where was he looking for the Mothman? Is he, it was just very cryptic terms that Woody was told his like basis of being there.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of what time is it? What do you call that? It's a city, just very weird, out of place. Like, what is this? What is this world I'm on?
Like he
type
should
thing.
know the type of things if he was.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, Woody's story goes on into some weird erotic stuff, which a lot of this ufology from that time
Did
strangely erotic.
yeah.
Even John Keel, he wrote some spicy fanfic about Batman at one point that was in like Penthouse or something, or Playboy. So there's something connected there too.
Yeah. Get their little jolly somewhere or another. But no, back to the Mothman thing. Like, where did the term Mothman
So
originate?
I remember seeing that was definitely a newsroom, like
Hmm.
somebody just named it the Mothman because the Batman series was on at the time. So I think they were just trying to play off of that. There's a killer moth in the Batman series.
Yeah.
So I think it was just
Okay.
they saw that it had fuzzy or feathered wings and just kind of put it to that. I think the eyes also had something to do with it. It had bug-like eyes.
I wondered if they didn't see. I know it gets wrote off for a lot of things, but like maybe they saw like a huge bird.
Right, which a lot of debunkers want to say that it was a misidentification of a sandhill crane, which is a large bird, but not like a thick, stocky man like
Yeah.
man looking bird, but it has a red like flare on the top of its head. So they're trying to say that the red eyes could just be, the red accent on its head reflecting, but it's pretty consistent through all the eyewitnesses that the eyes were about 5 inches apart and in its chest, which is also my like favorite design element of the Mothman. It's headless.
Mhm.
It's just wings and a torso, pretty much.
Which is kind of creepy in this fact that like anyone that has listened to my show knows the one thing that I saw never had a head and didn't have arms.
Really?
So basically, that when people listen to the show, I try not to talk about it. Basically when I saw that dog thing.
Right. I was gonna say I know the dog encounter.
But it's the same thing.
Okay. I guess
Like
I didn't realize
before the
that.
dog, the guy that was driving in front of me swerved to miss something in the road, and the thing was walking, and it didn't have an arm, it didn't have arms, it didn't have a head.
Okay.
And I was the first thing I come up to, and I swerved around to miss it too. So
Yeah.
we pulled into the parking lot right before we get to the highway,
Talk to each other.
and then we turned back around, and that's when the dog was laying in the road.
Oh, okay.
And I thought the thing that was walking was the dog, but the dog clearly was
Yeah. Already.
it was already there,
Yeah.
but it wasn't there when we just drove past. So we never did see the first thing walking, but the first thing walking was over had like in my vehicle. I never seen the top of it, and it was leaning forward and it was walking down the
Okay,
road in the
right.
middle.
Yikes.
So I've done everything I can to debunk it
Yeah, sure.
because I don't believe in any of this stuff.
Right.
really.
And I don't know if I've talked to you about my one single experience that it's not cryptid in nature, but it is a strange, like almost doppelganger vanishing hitchhiker
Mhm.
type thing. Okay. So I was living in Cincinnati. I went to the Art Academy of Cincinnati and I would go biking on the weekends because I didn't have my car down there. And I would ride my bike from downtown Cincinnati across the bridge into Newport, Kentucky,
Mhm.
over to Covington, Kentucky, and then back across the bridge back to my dorm. One of these days I was doing that, and then I decided to just kind of like follow the flow of Covington. And eventually I got to a red light. When I got to the red light, I, started looking around, taking a drink, and I saw a homeless guy that was like reclined up against a building on the sidewalk, and he looked like he just had like the tar beaten out of him. He had blood caked in his beard and on his neck, and his eyes were like almost swollen shut, like 80% swollen shut. And we kind of like acknowledged each other, and like white guy smiled. at each other. And soon after
Midwestern
that,
nod.
yeah. So soon after that, light turned green and I'm on an incline. So I'm like hauling ass about 8 blocks in, like 30, 40 seconds. And I come to another red light, and diagonal from me is the same exact guy, but standing. And by the time I look at him, he's already looking at me. So it felt very much like a
weirdness.
a personal, like
Yeah.
he's trying to freak me out type thing, which happened. And I got like a really harsh sense of fight or flight. And I booked it back across the bridge to Cincinnati and to my dorm. And then I really didn't even think about it for 2 or 3 days after that, until I don't know if we had to go to like the library in Covington for something, but just acknowledging that Covington, Kentucky existed, I remembered that I had this really weird thing happen. And then I started talking to everybody, which also researching all this stuff, I learned about paranormal apathy. And that's kind of what I chalked it up to. Do you know what paranormal apathy is?
No.
It's the idea that something so strange happens to you and you should be like gushing about it and talking about it nonstop.
And
But it's almost like turned off in your brain where you want to block out that experience.
right.
So I know a lot of like group alien abductee stories have that kind of thing. Specifically, I think of the 2 guys that experienced the Pascagoula aliens abduction. Those guys like kind of went their separate ways. One of them really wanted to talk about it, and he went on like the talk show circuit, but the other guy was very they just didn't want anything to do with each other at some point. Same with Terry Lovelace, who had an alien abduction experience at Devil's Den with one of his buddies. As soon as they kind of like not realize what happened, but once they were trying to piece everything together, both of them just like hated each other. They didn't want anything to do with each other. So paranormal apathy is just this idea that like you should want to like dig into whatever this is and try to get to the bottom of it, but I don't know if that's like something that's placed in your psyche that you don't want to think about it or talk about it. But that's kind of how it felt like after the fact, where 3 days went by and I didn't think about this weird thing, and then it's all I could think about for a while after that, trying to figure out how this happened.
That's kind of what happened between me and the guy that saw that thing, because I woke up the next morning and I drew it.
Yeah.
And I went online looking for information about it. And then he wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah, right.
Refused to talk about
Which I am more inclined to believe a person's story if they're like reclusive,
Yeah.
doing a lot of these events. I met Travis Walton last year, and I get like kind of a skeptical like side eye to people that make an entire life out of like telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want my weird experiencers to be like absolutely haunted by whatever happened. So, yeah, it's just, but yeah, that's the single weird experience I've had that I can't explain, no matter how much I told the story on Jim Harold's Campfire a few years ago, and then I met Jim Harold at a Monster Fest in Canton, Ohio. And it had been like over a year between me telling him and me talking to him. And we had this weird synchronicity where I came up and introduced myself and we were talking. And then he said, this is really weird. I actually just got an email about your story like 4 days ago. And he pulled it up, and it was just a guy talking about in his town, there were like 2 twin brothers that were famous for fucking with people by dressing the exact same and being on 2 different, streets at the same time. So unless both of these guys got in a bar fight, and it is, 2 identical twins that look like shit and look like they'd gotten beat to hell, it's just a very far-fetched explanation. And then recently, I finally found a story almost exactly like mine, but it had more of it had a better ending than mine does, where it was on a episode of Belief Hole, which is there was a call in that it was out of San Francisco. A guy who was skateboarding, he gets out of his building, he sees a bum, quote, he calls him a bum, and the bum looks him up and down and says, "I see you covered in blood." And the guy's like, "Well, that's weird." He gets on his skateboard and starts going down the hill in San Francisco, and there you can kind of like time the lights. So if you see that a light is red in 3 blocks, you count 30 seconds and it'll be green, and
Yeah.
you can
Most
roll
of them are
through
all
it.
set on
Yeah,
timers.
right.
Yeah.
So he was doing that, going downhill, hauling ass, because he knows that it'll turn green and he won't have to stop. He can just roll on through it. Well, he's getting down there, and there's the exact same guy that he had just left, 10 seconds earlier on the side, and he catches sight of him, and it freaks him out. So he comes to a skittering halt, and somebody ran the red light.
Hit him.
So it would have hit him,
Oh,
but it was a a guardian angel type element to it.
okay. That's weird.
Yeah. So I think about it quite a bit. I've told that story a few times now. I don't know. It's not enough to give me a paradigm shift, because I could just be misremembering at this point.
Mhm.
It was, 12 years ago. But yeah, it's the one thing that's I can't chalk up to anything other than something weird.
Right. So I didn't even talk about my shit. Even when I started the show, it'd been over a year before I even mentioned anything about mine, because what you just said, I don't want people thinking this, wow, he's just making stuff up or whatever.
Right.
Because
Because also one of my biggest fears now, that if I do see something, nobody's going to believe me, because I'm a cryptid artist. And of course, this guy saw something weird. That's
Right.
all he fucking thinks about and draws and all that kind
so
of stuff.
the reason I even do this, and even interested more into this whole thing, because of that event.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't believe in any of this stuff, and I still struggle to say I even do.
Right. Yeah.
But it's I saw something weird.
Mhm.
And I can't explain it. So I was now it gives more credence to people that have those experiences, because I feel like I'm one of them people.
Yeah. And I mean, the more I listen to and read and research weird stuff, there's so many weird themes and elements to stories that it would just be a hell of a coincidence if people are indeed making this up. Especially it's hard to gauge now in the age of the internet and creepypasta and everything, how much is genuine, I saw this, and how much is just, head games, or, people trying to get some attention. So it's hard to gauge at this point, but there are signs that you can look for in people's stories and people's accounts. And usually the more mundane are the more believable, because,
Right.
mine doesn't really have a cool ending. I
Right.
saw a guy and I got scared and ran home. That's really what you can.
Yeah. That's I always question things to an extent to where when I interview people, and I don't try and prove or disprove anybody, because that's not what I'm here for, but sometimes when you start hearing things, and then I was very skeptical of the people that had multiple experiences, just because. But then when I've started talking about things and I've started looking into things, and then I go back to stuff, I'm like, I had weird stuff that happened here. Was that I never chalked it up to anything strange.
Yeah, right.
But then you start thinking about all the weird stuff that's happened, and you're like, if I had multiple instances, now I feel like I don't believe my own self, because it's
exactly. And that's there. I have a lot of like I said, it's like a self-doubt thing where I've thought about this so much, and there's been so much time between now and when I had that weird experience, that I'm like, is it a dream? Everything, it feels so fuzzy, but I can still see it, so vividly, just from, my reaction and, the recoil my body had when I understood what was happening.
I don't even know how it I don't know how it happen, for something like that to go on. It would be strange, but I don't. My friend Ed, we did the other podcast together. He talks about this guy that he sees almost every day. It's almost on a loop. The guy's driving. He's getting off work. He always sees the guy, and the guy's always eating what looks like one of those gas station, I don't know if it's a hot dog or one of those tornado.
Keto, yeah.
He's always eating. He said he saw him again the other day, and he wanted to just follow him to see where the guy goes. He says he sees him, and it's always doing this. He's always taking a bite. It's always on a time loop. He said he's never really noticed it until he started to pay more attention.
I don't like that at all.
Yeah,
it feels icky.
Yeah,
It could just be a habitual. I'm a creature of habit. It could just be a guy that's like staunchly
yeah.
regimented. That.
But he says when he gets off, because he works different hour. Like he works at
Oh
a factory,
wow.
but
Okay.
like sometimes he works
Different
later.
shift. Yeah.
Like sometimes he works over for 10 hours, so 8 hour work 10, but then sometimes
But
he's
he
been
still
working
sees them.
12s. He was working 12s the other day. He got off at 7 o'clock and he's seen the guy again.
Is it the same like stretch of
Yeah,
road every
same
time?
spot.
That's so weird.
So I need to have him when like we do another episode. I need to have him come on here so we can talk about it. And at some point, I need to tell him just
Yeah.
follow the guy,
You
man.
ever watch the movie The Endless?
Uh-uh.
It's like a cult movie, two brothers that go back to this cult that they escaped from.
I've seen the stuff before, but I've never
Okay.
watched that.
There's a big element in that is time loops and people getting stuck in a cycle where some people have like an 8-second cycle before it restarts. Some people have a 24-hour cycle before it starts. Some people have, a years long cycle, and then they're always back in the same space. Some people are aware of it and some people aren't. And that kind of shit really messes with me.
Right. I feel like it's like a different version of Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
Like the creepier version.
Right. Yeah, it's a sinister version of
Yeah.
Groundhog's Day.
But got off topic of
I know,
Mothman
very
again.
much. Which
It's okay.
there's no script. We're just going off of it.
Yeah, anyone that listens to the show knows that I don't ever have anything planned out.
We can go to the Chicago Mothman sightings.
Those were more recent. Those were
Yeah, so there's two websites that you can like get the whole scoop on this thing, whatever it is. There's singularfortean.com and there's phantomsandmonsters.com.
That's Lon Strickler.
Yeah, Lon Strickler, and then Tobias Whalen is the other guy.
Okay.
With Singular Fortean. I guess so. Shorthand. Chicago has been having large winged humanoid encounters for about 12 years now. I think the first reported sighting of whatever this is was back in 2012. But I mean, if you dig into anything like this, there's been weird reports of winged humanoids like through centuries. So, but modern accounts, 2012 seems to be the first Chicago area Mothman sighting. And then 2017 is where you see a boom in hundreds of people not knowing what they saw, but knowing enough that it's a man with wings, or sometimes it's no wings and it's just a man hovering in the sky, which is also a John Keel era, Point Pleasant phenomenon of just seeing the silhouette of men standing still in the sky. But especially around the O'Hare airport, I'm not an expert in any of this stuff. I'm just, just going off of, reports. And like I said, Unsolved Mysteries just released a Chicago Mothman episode at the end of July. There's supposed like conspiracies with the O'Hare, Chicago O'Hare airport, like trying to silence employees and pilots from, going public with any of this stuff. But like I said, there's well over 100 accounts of pretty much the same thing. But whereas the Point Pleasant Mothman was described more like a bird with like feathered angel wings almost, there have been a lot of like membranous wing, insectoid like wings. So there's been a lot of like, I would say more close up encounters, like maybe through a fence in a field and not just people driving and seeing something in for a blip of time. But yeah, very much bat-like or insect-like wings, but it still has the red eyes, which is the common factor, which is how it turned into the Chicago Mothman.
Did you ever hear about the ones that they saw supposedly at Chernobyl?
See,
and I don't know how true it is.
They call it, I know that's called the Black Bird. And I know that, excuse me again, I know that is a thing like throughout millennia, is like the Black Bird is like a cultural phenomena where, going back to Thunderbirds, I think it's supposed to be like a harbinger of doom type thing too. But I know that Richard Haddam supposedly made up that in the Mothman Prophecies movie. Richard Hatem being the screenwriter. I know that he made up that, and then I've also seen that supposedly Mothman was seen around 9/11.
Yeah,
So
I saw
I
that
don't know
too.
if I believe any of that stuff, but the black bird, it wasn't described as a humanoid thing like Mothman. It was described as literally a giant bird. So I want to believe that there's something to that.
Hmm.
Same with was it the Fukushima
Yeah.
the nuclear? I want to say that they also had a black bird
So I've seen.
epidemic.
It seems like anytime there's like a big tragedy thing like that,
Yeah.
there's always people saying that they were side. But I was like, is that true, or someone just making up bullshit because just to try and
Have
cash in
you
on it?
heard of the Joplin butterfly people story?
Uh-uh.
Joplin, Missouri had that giant
Big tornado.
tornado.
Yeah.
Around that tornado, people all over town, like as shit was hitting the fan, were claiming to see essentially angels, is how like kids described it, but they had butterfly wings, and they would either come down and intervene in, a car is flying at you, and then all of a sudden this man with butterfly wings is like shielding you, and nothing happened. But I did a little episode of that on the Strangeology podcast a few years ago, where we went into this whole story where, and we got into like psychopomps, which is, in Greek mythology and in Roman mythology,
Mhm.
the idea of somebody like guiding you on your way to Hades, or, whatever heaven
Right.
is in that culture. So a lot of speculation with that, but then we also got into stone tape theory, because maybe it was like so much electricity in the air between the supercell thunderstorm and all of the emotional like bandwidth that was being expelled from all these people in peril. Just a thinning of the veil happened, and whatever these things were popped through to intervene and offer protection, I guess. It's But the thing that stuck with me with that story is that that's like straight up the Bible Belt. Like
Right.
children know what angels are supposed to look like in Christianity. It's usually bird wings. It's usually
Right.
handsome built people. So it's just a strange detail to throw in butterfly wings, and like the most beautiful like glass mosaic butterfly wings that. But then on top of that, it was a lot of children, and children that don't have like phones. They
Right.
don't have access to other kids that go to different schools in the area. So it was just, there was too many reports of the same thing coming from people that are separated socially,
Right.
that there was definitely something, unless they're all having like
Mass.
a mass hysteria
Right.
type thing.
But it's strange they'd all be hallucinating the same
that
exact.
exactly. So
That's why I don't understand when people try and use that excuse, like mass hysteria. They're all having the same hallucinations. Like, explain how that's possible.
yeah, right. I can understand the game of telephone and people freaking out because they heard something, but I don't know, it's just weird to
Like, if someone had that experience and they told someone else, and someone's like, "Yeah, I had that too," but like if they're all having it at the same time without any communication, like you cannot.
during a citywide tragedy.
Right.
It's just a weird thing to make up and
Yeah.
then to run with.
It's funny because you mentioned like the Bible Belt or whatever. Like, I always think it's funny because people say this is what angels look like, but the biblical description of an
they're
angel don't look.
disgusting.
They don't look
Just
anything like.
abstract. Tool
Yeah.
music video.
So, where did that come from? And like, without going into the whole religious aspect of it, I've always thought that was strange. That people are like, "Oh, they look like us with wings."
Yeah, right.
I'm like,
No, that's
that's not 100% accurate.
yeah,
But,
it's the PG version of it.
and I'm pretty sure, which is strange, and I don't know. I'll probably get messages from people saying I'm wrong, but isn't in the Bible it mentioned that we were created in
God's image.
God's image? But doesn't God say our in it? He doesn't say my. He says they were created in our image.
It's been so long since I've had to peel open the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm wrong or right. I'm sure someone will let me know, but
I
I
want to
thought
say it was. I want to say the quote is in His image.
in his image.
I want to say so, but again,
Okay.
I'm not a theologian, and I'm also not religious.
Because I thought somewhere I'd read recently that it says we were created in God, or men was created in our image. God referred to himself as plural.
I like that.
So
You can edit this out, but this is something that I caught on to while I was just, binging documentaries and just consuming a lot of weird media. Um, I think it was like three in a row shows I was watching about weird phenomena. They always went into these are good, honest, church-going folks that know what they saw, that kind of thing. If you go to church, that doesn't
make you
it doesn't mean anything. You
right.
believe that, I don't have to go into like a disparaging thing about Christianity, but like it's already you're already showing us that your beliefs don't have like scientific basis and you are willing to believe in very, very, very far-fetched things being reality. So that doesn't really like it's not going to sway me one way or another just because you go to church,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
I won't edit it out. I say it all. I say it all the time. Basically, for me, it's like, and I actually think I brought this up recently the other day. When people don't like religious types or whatever, I find it funny that they don't believe in paranormal.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they believe in a Holy Spirit. Well, it's a spirit.
It's a multifaceted like way of believing.
I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe in the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
What?
You believe in demons. You literally created Satan. The Catholic Church literally created the idea of the devil and ran with it. So the only people that believe in the devil are Christians. Like, Satanism is more about, the earth and just being a good person, like without the promise of the afterlife. So I don't know. It's a whole tangent.
That's just what the devil wants you to believe. Yeah, exactly. No, off topic again.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's just
I might as well call my show Off the Rails because that's where it typically goes. But no, the other day in front of you, I have the Cthulhu little thing, and I bought it, and the guy was ringing me up, and he said, "Have fun with your cult stuff." I was like, "All right,
like the
dude."
most commercial, like it's the most. Lovecraft's pretty. It's like when people like are up in arms about like Stephen King stuff, like the West Memphis 3 kids. Do you remember that story? Like getting shitty with kids about wearing Kiss shirts and Metallica shirts and reading Stephen King. These are the most commercial, corporate, filtered, weirdo things you can buy. I just feel like if you're really into that kind of stuff, there has to be more underground stuff you could get into besides Stephen King and Metallica.
I like Cthulhu, like this is the text, but I've always liked like octopus, cephalopods, and I like giant monsters. So I've always liked Cthulhu because he's a big giant monster. But he's also got like the cephalopod look to him. So for me, it's just I'm not out here worshiping.
Yeah, right. It's like I said, it's the most commercial thing. I'm buying I'm buying a figurine from the FYE.
Right. But no, I was one of those bookstores and the guy was being like, "Enjoy your cult decor." I was like, "All right, man, thanks. I sure will."
Yeah.
I'm gonna go home and worship to him and like make sacrifices or something.
My guy, you sell manga here. This is like pretty tame.
Right. But no, that's I get a lot of weird looks, especially anymore. Like if I actually don't feel so strange, but I see a lot of people wearing Bigfoot stuff now.
Oh yeah.
Like I was in Walmart yesterday and a guy was wearing a Bigfoot shirt. I was like, man, he's an older guy. I was like, I'd give him one of my cards to be like, hey man, he's probably like, what's a podcast?
Yeah, right.
I was like, so
being doing these events and everything, I didn't realize how Bigfoot is like a right wing like icon. Have you ever noticed any of that?
No, but that doesn't surprise me.
You'll see it next month in Nashville, Indiana.
It doesn't surprise me. I went to a local Bigfoot thing. It was in South Whitley, and I was surprised by how many like older folks that were there.
Yeah,
and when I did these UFO speaking events, the one in Fort Wayne, there's a lot of older folks that were at those too, which kind of surprised me. I didn't think they listened to stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
But apparently, like, this is a very popular topic for a lot of older folks.
I mean, I get it. Like I said, the 60s and 70s were like,
Well,
you know,
that
ape-man hunting,
this is what actually I find interesting because when I was at one of the UFO events, and he'll be one of the ones I do out here in person. He told me that he was told by two different people that they saw winged humanoids recently out by Miss Sunawal.
I have actually also seen something about that on Phantoms and Monsters, but it was an account from like decades ago.
Well, this was supposedly recently because right after I found out about it, this was back in March.
Uh-huh.
Me and my friend and my stepson went out there. I was going hunting that night. I was like,
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna go look and I'm
check it
gonna
out.
use my 11-year-old for bait. So we went out there and we were driving around and clearly didn't find anything.
Yeah, sure.
But I went to the same locations and everything, but supposedly one lady had saw one at the tree line. And when her headlights hit it, it just started floating upward.
I forgot to mention this in the Mothman discussion pieces. That's another one of my favorite mechanics of Mothman encounters is that it doesn't flap its wings.
It just
It
levitates.
raises its wings and then it just levitates in the sky,
That's what this thing had done.
which is obviously terrifying.
Mhm.
I feel like that's a much more like head scratcher.
Yeah, how it just floats.
Yeah.
But
So,
that's what the description was they thought it was a person,
yeah.
and then it just started floating up and went up above the trees and flew off over the trees, but it never was flapping.
That's interesting.
And then there was another one that was in the middle of the road, and then they thought it was a person in a coat. I was like, well, that sounds familiar.
That's it. Yeah, so I can't remember what it has it's a German story that is associated with Mothman stuff. It's called like the Freiburg Shrieker. There's a German story from the 1800s about men that were on their way to the mine to start their day's work, and there was a person standing in front of the mouth of the cave that it looked like he had a trench coat on with his hands folded, and as they got closer it opened up these huge giant wings and like stood its ground and just screamed at them anytime they tried to get close. So the guys puttered around for hours waiting for this thing to just like walk off. And finally, they look over and the thing's gone. So they start packing up their stuff to go walk, get to work, and the mine explodes. So that's another one of those like Harbinger of Doom-esque type stories. But yeah, it's a weird. See, that's what I'm saying. Everything's connected. There's, arms folded.
Well, what's funny, and I don't remember if I've told this on my show or not, but like when we were out going to look for this thing, I was telling my friend what we were doing. And he referred to the guy as our friend. I was like, I don't know who you're talking about. He's like, our friend Mitch saw something out there. I was like, who's Mitch?
Who's Mitch?
But he said him and his wife were driving out that way. And I don't remember how many years ago this was, but he said that they saw a dead animal, like a dead deer on the side of the road. And it looked like a person hunkered down eating it. And as they got closer with the headlights, it raised its head up and did like a weird hiss, like look at them, and then like opened up wings and like took off in the air, straight up in the air. I was like, that sounds like a gargoyle.
Yeah, right.
I was like, but he'd never, and my friend that I was out there, he is not one to ever, I've never caught him ever bullshitting anything. Like that is not him.
Mm-hmm.
So the story that was told to him, I believe, was told to him.
Yeah, sure.
But that is a very weird time to tell me this when we're out here looking for this thing in the same area. And then you tell me, oh, yeah, our friend Mitch told. I was like, well, I don't know Mitch, but now I want to know Mitch because I want to talk to him. Because I'd like to know what it was. But they swear, or he said he swore that they saw something eating roadkill.
Which is again
and looked like
another
a person.
Mothman thing. Part of the couples that were, in the car chase that kicked off the Mothman stuff. They said that they saw a large dog dead on the side of the road. And when they were coming back the same way with the sheriff to investigate, the dog's carcass was gone. So, and then that's also connected to a guy named Yule Partridge in Point Pleasant. He was outside his house because his dog was going crazy, and he claims that he saw two red eyes next to, like a shed, a few yards away from his house, and he could tell just by knowing how tall his shed is that this thing was standing about 7 feet tall. And dog goes crazy, dog runs after this thing, and he never sees the dog again. And he said that he would have chased after the dog, but the presence of whatever was at the shed instilled so much fear in him that he couldn't like bring himself to leave the porch and go after his dog, and then never saw the dog again.
So I never took anything like this, like aspect to it until just recently, because someone asked me this, and I don't remember if I was on someone else's show or they're just in general talking to me, but they said the first thing that I describe when I say it as the headless, armless thing, I thought it was a person in a cloak. I said it looked like wrapped in a blanket or something. Someone's like, you think it was wrapped in wings?
Yeah.
Like,
sure.
They're like,
especially
they're like, your description sounded like a Mothman. I was like,
yeah, right. Just different.
Like, I didn't see
contextual.
Yeah, I was like, I never even thought of anything like that. I was like, but I don't know, like I don't know. The whole thing, I still, to this day, like 17 years later, it still pisses me off.
Yeah, of course.
Because I've never found an answer, and I'll probably never will.
Well, I always just say that, I want it too much, and I think the universe knows that I want it too much. Like, I want to experience something that is, like, paradigm shifting. I want to, like, feel the awe of believing in something and, like, chasing it. But I don't think it'll ever happen because I'm looking too hard.
Someone said if I ever see it again, what I do is like, I'm running that motherfucker over, so I know.
Yeah, I watch all these these paranormal shows where they travel hundreds of miles to stay the night in an asylum, and then as soon as something happens that they're there to capture, they scream and run away. Yeah. Like I want to run in, and I want to get to the bottom of it.
Like for me, like I'm not going to run away from it. I didn't do it the last time. Like,
the Dogman encounters. That I don't want to face head first, all the Land Between the Lakes stuff, the Fear Eater type stories.
Right. And I struggle with that.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't ever afraid of that. I don't ever even say I saw a dog man, because I don't even believe in dog man.
There was just a dog.
An upright it stood up on two legs and be like, what up, dude? Like, but no, like for me, like, and my friend, the one that I recorded recently, I was in a band with him. So the next day, I think that I had to go to practice, and I mentioned on our car, I was like, you're one of the first people I talked to about it. I was like, yeah, I remember that. That weird. I was like, y'all probably thought I was fucking crazy.
Yeah, right.
And this is before any of this stuff was even like popular. Yeah, it was like, and I say popular, but like it's more open.
It's pretty prevalent, like especially the last 6-8 years, like Dogman stories or sightings have like
I never even heard of that thing.
Exactly. So until there's always been what we called them werewolf stories before Dogman came into, which I know that's also another push, is that maybe a lot of Bigfoot sightings are misidentified as Dogman or vice versa. So I don't know. No matter what, there's weird stuff going on, and not everybody is lying.
Yeah.
And and if even 1% of the stories are true,
they're still true.
I need to know what that is.
There's still that 1%. Like if 99% of the people are wrong, there's still 1% that's not wrong.
Yeah, which is enough for me.
Right. It's enough for me to sit go and spend thousands of dollars to build a place to record and talk to about this stuff.
Well, on my business card, it says, encyclopedia of useless knowledge. Like all of these. Yeah. This doesn't mean anything. I'm not a better father or a better husband from all this dumb shit.
My business cards, I had to black out the QR code because the QR code stopped working.
Men in Black.
Well, it came up with wanting me to pay a monthly fee to keep it active. I was like, that's a QR code.
Yeah, right.
So they wanted me to pay $10 a month. So every business card I have, I had to put a black dot.
Just use Linktree. Linktree will give you a QR code.
Yeah, but
and it's free.
I was using whatever I forget what I was to design. I used Adobe to design all this stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, it supposedly generates that QR code. And they want me to pay like a subscription to the
Of course
QR.
you do.
Yeah, it's Adobe.
Right.
But, so
So yeah,
that's
yeah, it says Encyclopedia of Useless Knowledge and also Abductee Hopeful, which I know I'll regret one day if something weird happens. And then recently, somebody apparently gifted some of my art to Henry Zabrowski that does Last Podcast on the Left.
Mhm.
And they told him my name, he said, "Oh, his name is very fancy." So that's also going on my business card
Very
next time.
fancy.
Yep, his name is very fancy. Quote Henry Zabrowski, Last Podcast on the Left.
Yeah. I said, I've had this little guy. This was funny. Like before Bigfoot was ever popularized, like I don't know where I got this. I think my mom and dad gave it to me. And it's just been something that I've always liked as a kid.
Yeah, of course.
So going through some of my old stuff, like I found some of my old Godzilla toy, whatever, my old King Kongs, and I have an old little
Yeah.
Bigfoot.
I had to make a trip out to Point Pleasant to the Mothman Museum in June to deliver some posters, and I made it a day trip, and I had to take my kids, and they're not interested in this shit like whatsoever. It's not Minecraft, and it's not, they just don't care. So, but taking them to Point Pleasant, they definitely like perked up that, the entire town is built on Mothman economy, and there's, tons of fun stuff there. But my 3-year-old got a little plushie Sasquatch, so now she wants to consume everything that is Sasquatch related. So we've been watching Harry and the Hendersons on repeat for the last 14 days.
We watched it a couple of years ago, and I think my 3-year-old now would actually like it because he was so young at the time when we watched it. But he loves Godzilla.
Yep.
So he likes to come out
to win is a win.
And behind you, he sees all that stuff. He's like, "I open?" I was like, "Nope." He's like, "I open." I'm like, "Nope." He's like, "I open?" No, you're not open any of them.
You can open it when I'm dead.
Like
when it's all yours.
He sees all that stuff. And most of that stuff I used to have like in pristine, but it's been in the basement and it wasn't climate controlled. And a lot of it's gotten ruined. The packages, I was like, so I'm aggravated, but
gives it character.
Yeah. But basically for him, he just wants to play with everything. But I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do when I die. I can't be buried with us. So my wife's gonna just have
pay for college at some point, maybe. Keep an eye on
I say
on those eBay listings.
My half-ass painted cabinet behind you. I got all the comic books and all sorts of things in there from that. But
you never know.
You mentioned you don't have a whole lot of Bigfoot stuff. I was like, that's my little AI generated T-shirt Bigfoot, but it works.
Yep.
Shout out to Shane.
Cheapy Squeegee.
Yep, Cheapy Squeegee does all the shirts for me. He did the same thing for like all the old band shirts that are in here. He did all them too.
He is a guy that I could just talk to for hours.
Right.
Well, he could talk to me for hours.
Right.
Like he is just he has such like a weird hybrid like engineer artist brain that he could do, and he knows everything that he's interested in. He knows it like to a T.
One of the first times I met the guy, I'd talked to him about getting shirts made, and we were just up there talking or whatever, and he was talking to me about certain things and said that he was going to go out camping that weekend or what. He mentioned, he's like, "You want to come out?" I was like, "I don't know you, dude."
No, he'd be a great guy to go camping with.
Yeah. But like, I love the dude. He's a great guy.
yeah.
Like we've gotten along. So like, that was my first impression of him was just like,
being invited to go camping.
Yeah. He's like, "We're going to go out there, probably eat some mushrooms." I was like, "Right on, dude."
I'm allergic.
I was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to go on that trip because I got this show coming up. That's why you're making those shirts."
Also, again, I don't know you. I'm not going to take drugs with you.
The lesson for this episode: don't take drugs from strangers.
Yep. Hope you listened all the way through to get there.
Yes. No, a side note story. This was, again, dating me, but this was in an Ozfest in the early 2000s. I think it was Ozfest 02 or something like that. So it's been 20-something years ago, but we were standing there and somebody handed a pipe next to I was standing to my friend that I was with, and he hit it. I was like, "Are you fucking stupid?" I was like, "You don't even know what that was. Like, you have no idea what that was."
This is before fentanyl. This is back when people wanted you to be fucked up.
Right.
Without being nefarious.
Right. Like that could have been crack, dude. Like, you don't even know what that was. But so no, that's Life lessons, folks. Don't just don't do drugs. At least not with strangers. But no, as far as the Mothman stuff goes, like to me, that's always been, like I said, since I watched that movie and I didn't know it was based on anything.
Yeah, right.
But after that's when I started digging into it. And I wasn't even digging into cryptid stuff in general up until 2007 when I seen some.
Right.
Because to me, I didn't believe in any of it. And it's like I still struggle with it, but like I didn't have the interest, I guess. Like I was interested in stuff like it, but for me, I just didn't think it was real. Like,
Yeah, sure.
so I just like crazy people or making
Right.
stuff up,
Mass
like,
hysteria.
yeah. But now it's just like, they probably really are seeing something.
You know, yeah, it might not be exactly what they're describing, but something bizarre happened and it was in a finite amount of time and it all culminated with that bridge collapse, which is, that's the tidy narrative of it. People saw Mothman afterwards. There were plenty of sightings in and around the area of weird stuff, but I think at that point, after 13 months of like I said, Mothmania, nobody wanted to talk about that shit anymore. Nobody wanted to talk about UFOs. Nobody wanted to talk about anything going on while they had,
So how
40 some people die or went
how
missing.
far along was the first sighting up until the bridge collapse?
13 months.
It was 13 months.
It's kind of shaky because not Point Pleasant, but nearby, technically the first sighting was a group of guys that were digging a grave that saw a giant bird like swoop over their truck and land on a branch, and it was absurdly huge. That's like, they're not bringing in tourism from this being the first place that Mothman was seen or anything like that, but I think that's the first reported and documented encounter was outside of Point Pleasant by like 40 minutes.
I'm only bringing this up because we mentioned birds.
Right.
And for some reason, this just clicked in my head this morning, and I can correlate it to something last year. This morning, my wife was looking out, and there was a big black crow, we're going to say, out right in front of our driveway. We don't ever see them just around. Like, I might see one flying, and it wasn't a vulture, like a buzzard or anything. It was an actual big black bird, but it was really big. I only seen part of it flying off. It was about as big. It looked like it was almost the size of a buzzard, but it didn't have the buzzard head.
Okay. Do we have ravens here?
I don't know.
I know ravens are huge.
Maybe it was.
Like that.
There's
a phenomenon called thunder crows.
Right.
Yeah,
it looked like a very large black bird. I don't know what I've seen. Blackbirds, we get them all the time, but it was a lot bigger than normal blackbird. And last year, which I think is creepier, I used to work over at my field office was at a trailer over in Logansport because I always am stationed somewhere different. Outside on the back of my truck bed is a large black bird just like kind of just sitting on it. I threw rocks at it and they didn't fly away because I didn't think anything. I was like, that's weird, but I was like, that was a really big weird black bird. And that was the end of it. But since we were just talking about birds, I thought of the bird sitting on the truck, and I was like, well, shit, this morning we seen a big black bird out the end of our driveway.
It's all connected,
like
synchronicities,
right? That term gets blown out of proportion these days. So,
talking about wanting experiences so bad that I'll never get. My wife had one of the coolest UFO sightings that I've heard in a long time. Out by us, out in Wabash, out in the Rich Valley area. Her parents live out there, and she was taking our kids over there, and it was in the morning, like 7, about 8 o'clock in the morning. So the sun's out. Driving down a country road, she looked over and saw 6 diamond-shaped things just hovering in the air and shimmering. And, she looked at them multiple times and they just stayed there. And she drove past them and that was it. But she told me about that, and I looked it up on I started looking in the area on the Enigma app.
Right.
Yeah. And back in like 1986, it was just one, but it was the exact description: a prismatic diamond-shaped thing hovering over this exact field that she was at.
When did you say this was?
It's like Rich Valley.
No, when?
Oh, when? She saw it back. I want to say it's going on a year now. I want to say it
Okay.
was like October, and then I was able to find on Enigma a report of the same thing back in like 1986.
Because this was, I'll let you watch it here. This was back in June. That was in Peru.
It's like a Tic Tac almost.
Yeah, is it actually playing?
Yeah.
Okay. This was sent to me by someone from town, and they said it was, they lived just on the other side of the Wabash River,
Interesting.
and they said the lights were spiraling, like you
Oh,
could see,
really?
like
Okay.
it was,
Like rotation.
they could see like the colors were kind of like rotating around it,
Okay.
but
That's awesome.
and it was big because that was going over like the where they're positioned at. They were on this side of the river, so they were looking over the river.
Right.
This was at like
Quite
1 in the
distance.
morning,
Yeah.
and it was silent, but it was really big.
I mean, we are in Grissom Air Base territory, so
Yeah.
there's tons of weird stuff all the time. I'm from Kokomo. We had the Kokomo boom for a few years.
Yeah, that was when my friend when he came over to record with me, he mentioned that
Oh, yeah.
in '08 they had the big crashed UFO. I was like, oh, I don't know if it was really
There's a
crashed.
crashed UFO?
That's what the UFO Hunters show was out there investigating.
Really? Okay. I guess I didn't know
Yeah.
that there was.
They claim there had been like a crash. The police were chasing it or whatever. Like if you get on YouTube, look up UFO Hunters Kokomo,
Okay.
and there's an episode that was dedicated to that.
Okay. Because I know my high school like cop was interviewed about the boom because he also has like Grissom Air Base clearances or something like that. So he was like saying, telling him what he could tell him. But I just thought it was about the boom and I wasn't interested.
Little story about Grissom, and I would have to ask my dad or my uncles that were stationed out there, but I've always heard rumors that under Grissom there used to be silos for during the Cold War
Oh, yeah.
where they kept certain devices out there. I was like, I wonder if that's true. I was like, I don't know if anyone that I know that I'm related to that was in the military out there, because my dad was in the Air Force, my uncle was in the Air Force, my uncle actually still works out on base. I wonder if they had any privileged knowledge of what was underneath the tarmac. Probably not, but
It's a strange
it's kind of weird. But
Indiana,
yeah,
of all places.
well, during the Cold War, that was actually one of the targets I've always was told,
Oh, really?
because it was a big, huge, like for the refueling.
Okay.
Grissom's like a big
I know
refueling.
Grissom's like one of the only, one of the special places where like Air Force One will land. So I guess it does make sense. It is one of the more
Yeah, it was a big refueling
privileged
station.
places. Okay.
And then for whatever reason now,
Yeah, strategically that would make sense.
and now it's it's not even active anymore.
Yeah, it's a museum.
Yeah, no,
Essentially.
they still have it guarded though, which is strange.
Yeah, I have a bonehead friend that when we were in high school, we'd go, driving up to Okefenokee, and then he drove into the Aeroplex and
got
us
pointed.
chased off by whatever, whatever security they have.
We were going out there one night. This was back when I was still in school, so it was like 25 years ago. I was driving, and I'm listening to where my friend is telling me to go because we're going to some girl's house. And the next thing I know, there's these armed guards with rifles running out. I was like, I don't think we're in the right area. Like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm listening to this guy, man.
My passenger princess.
Like he's trying to go to this girl's house, man. I was like,
We're
clearly not
in the wrong place.
I was like, clearly I took the wrong exit. Because that's when they first started letting people live out there. So that's when Eagles Point was like. So we just went out there, and apparently we were going right towards that gate. And that's a no access gate.
Right. Yikes.
Like, oops.
My bad, fellas. Can I have a mulligan?
I'm only 16, dude. Don't kill me. I'm like a junior in high school. Leave me alone. But the good old days. I was thinking though, with the Mothman and the premonitions that people had and everything else, if it's actually true that people were actually seeing something out by the dam.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of creepy in the sense that if people are seeing, I was like, I don't want to go camp out there anymore. But no, that's
I think it's just I think it's coincidence. I don't believe in the Harbinger of Doom stuff. It's a sexy, plot point for the story, but
there's just so much stuff tied in with it.
Well, along with the Point Pleasant stuff, have you heard of the cornstalk curse element of that whole story?
I've heard. I don't know what it is, but I've heard someone refer to it before.
Yeah, there's plenty of I think it was the French-American War
Mhm.
was fought partially there. There was the Battle of Point Pleasant, and that's like a whole part of the town history too. I think the slogan of Point Pleasant is technically where history, where legend and history meet or something like that. So
Mhm.
there's plenty of like American history stuff along with all the Mothman stuff. But supposedly, the land was cursed after a Shawnee chief was like wrongfully like murdered. It was just like a misunderstanding, and supposedly he, in his dying breath, like let out a curse on the land, and so a lot of like the bad stuff that happened throughout the years has been blamed on the cornstalk curse, and then
Okay.
turned into being blamed on the Mothman.
Was the chief Cornstalk? Is that why they call it? His name was
Yeah,
Cornstalk.
the cornstalk curse.
Okay. I remember hearing the name of Chief Cornstalk, but I didn't know.
Yeah, if you go to Point Pleasant, they have a statue of
Okay.
him out
Maybe
there.
that's where I've seen stuff up
Yeah.
looking into it. But did they ever determine what caused the bridge to collapse?
It was a faulty, so it's a suspension bridge. It was a faulty eye bar that, I think it was just cars were getting heavier since
Since
I
they
think the
designed it.
bridge was built in the 20s.
Right.
And so it had been 40 years and cars were getting bigger and it was rush hour traffic and it was before Christmas. And I think it just had too much weight on it and it's the bar let go and the bridge swayed and then on the Point Pleasant side it started to crumble into the water.
No. There was 40.
I think 46 dead and then 2 were never recovered, so 48 altogether.
Okay. I remember in the movie, like the lady that didn't like those, she was the sheriff. But obviously, the
Yeah.
movie wasn't real.
Right, yeah,
But
she was a culmination of a few different characters in the book, The Mothman Prophecies.
so was Will Patton's character. I can't think of who he.
Yeah, Gordon.
Because he was the one that was talking to Indrid Cold.
Yeah, he was supposed to be the Woody Derenberger character, which
they didn't even. The guy wasn't even named John Keel in the movie, was he?
Right. It was John Klein.
Yeah.
It was Richard Gere. And then he goes and talks to the expert on Mothman sightings and stuff, and his name was Alexander Leak, which is an anagram. It's Keel backwards.
Yeah.
So it's like little fun Easter eggs like that. But yeah, there's if people read the Mothman Prophecies book and then are pissed off that the Mothman Prophecies movie isn't like the book is just a shit ton of anecdotes. There's no, it's fashioned into a tidy narrative of, the year or so that John Keel was going back and forth from Point Pleasant to New York and all the weird stuff. But he was also, there was a woman that ran like a news column called Where the Waters Mingle. Her name was Mary Hire, and she was like his like right hand person with taking reports and finding witnesses and just gathering information and stuff like that. But Mary Hire was also a person that had premonitions, and she had like one of the more creepy ones where she was having dreams of seeing Christmas presents floating along the river. And then, people were Christmas shopping. The bridge went down December 15th, 1967. So it was,
the movie made it like his wife that I don't remember. It's been so long.
Yeah, they had just like bought a house and they were on their way home. And she saw the Mothman like while driving, and she skidded out and like hit her head against the car window. And then I don't know if she had an aneurysm or if maybe they found a tumor. I don't remember how it exactly had happened.
I don't remember if the movie did she actually die.
She did die. Yeah.
Okay.
Because then he, after she dies, I think it's supposed to be like a little bit of time had gone by, and John Klein is supposed to be going to Washington, D.C., or maybe he's from D.C. He's supposed to, he's going to like Charleston.
Yeah.
And then he ends up in Point Pleasant, and he's pulled over and he goes to Will Patton's house. And then Will Patton says that he had been there like 3 or 4 nights before. So there's that whole thing.
What actually led John Keel down there? Was it because of the sighting?
So
How did he get involved
that's
in it, I
funny.
guess?
John Keel was doing a story about a woman that had a cat with bat wings. And so he was in the area. He was near Point Pleasant doing the stupid story about a cat that supposedly had wings. And when he got down there, the cat's wings had fallen off. So so he was like trying to salvage a story, it sounded like. And then the newspapers ran about the kids that were chased off from the TNT area in the car
It
case.
almost sounds like just made up at this point, just to cover. Like, why was he? What news agency was he for that sent him down there to cover?
I think I don't know if he was, I think technically he was freelance.
Okay.
It seemed like he was a guy that, he would cover a story and then he would just sell it to whoever wanted a filler piece.
So it almost sounds like the freaking, what's that old tabloid?
The Weekly World News
Yeah,
or National Enquirer.
Yeah,
or-
something like that. Like
Yeah.
the Batwing.
Right.
I don't know if any of that stuff was around back in those days, but you had to. I remember at the supermarket had like Bat Boy.
Oh yeah, I remember Bat Boy,
Yeah.
clear as day.
It's funny because people have apparently now claimed that they've seen something like that, and I don't necessarily believe it, but it's like,
Yeah, I mean, if you want to lean into it, like it could be a tulpa type situation. Enough people. It's so ingrained in the culture and the zeitgeist that that's a big like Slender Man thing. There are so many people that claim that they've seen Slender Man.
that was a
And,
creepypasta.
Yeah, it's
just
it's we know like its origin. Like
just like the rake.
yeah,
And
like
people say they see rakes all the time. I was like, well, if you go back to the old descriptions of pale crawlers, like
Yeah.
those were not creepypastas because
Right.
those were like even the Dover Demon.
yeah, I was gonna say Dover Demon, Wendigo, like they're different sizes, gray aliens, like
Yeah.
different sizes, but still the same build.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, but at the same time, with like Slenderman and creepypasta type stuff, like a girl was attempted, you know, two girls did stab a girl.
Yeah,
by the
so
name
did
of
two
Slenderman.
girls-
So in a way, like
Right.
psychologically, it becomes, the news is covering Slenderman.
They made a
And,
video game about Slender Man.
Yeah, right. So I mean, I'm not saying it's real, but there is like power to that character at that point.
Siren Head.
Yeah, right.
You-
Trevor Henderson. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a
well,
buddy.
So people have been reporting seeing this thing
Sure.
now. And I'm like, that's very
Which also, I don't know. One of my favorite books is Stephen King's It, just because of like. Have you ever read It?
I've never read
Okay,
it.
it's long as hell, but it's one of my favorite stories because I love like this town is cursed type
Mhm.
stories, and that's like pretty much the whole of Derry is like. In between all of the Pennywise and the kids stuff, there are these interludes that Stephen King just wrote, like just lore about the town and like how awful it's always been,
Mhm.
and it's because Pennywise has been there for since the beginning of time. It just I don't know, it just kind of feels like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like when it comes to Stephen King, and a lot of people lately anymore, I don't know. I'm surprised he hasn't been canceled for some of his old writings.
It was cocaine.
Yeah.
That's a different guy.
Yeah.
That's Steve King.
Yeah. But a lot of the things that the guy had written, what type of mind is like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with like it.
Yeah.
But like, where do you come up with some of that
That's
stuff?
cocaine. Cocaine and
That's a-
alcohol.
that's a
He
whole
freely he freely puts that out there that all of his ideas were fueled by cocaine.
I mean, it's just such a like
But-
bizarre, dark stuff.
But I
like,
bring up It because that's part of the mechanics of that story is that the kids, whatever they're afraid of is how Pennywise
Mhm.
would show itself. So I don't know what that's called, but just that I think it goes to trickster god stuff.
Yeah.
Like
I've heard people call them like egregores or something like
yeah,
that.
I know that's like a Harry Potter thing too.
Like you tulpas, egregores,
Yeah.
like it's something like the mind. Like,
Which is also why I think that all paranormal phenomena has like an element of co-creation from just like your own perspective of how the world works.
it almost, and I'd say this every once in a while too. But like, if you think about things in that aspect, it almost sounds like to me, almost like we have the ability to create with our own mind, which is strange because if you think about it, everyone like we can manifest these types of.
Well, have you
things.
ever, what's it called? There's a book called Mutants and Myths, Mutants and something. It's a collection of stories from different comic book creators and writers and artists and just weird things that have happened to them. So Bernie Wrightson is one of my favorite illustrators. He's like the illustrator. He has a couple weird accounts, and then like Alan Moore has some weird accounts, and a lot of comic book creators like meeting their characters in real life. It's weird stuff like that. Like before Comic Cons and before before
they were pop culture.
Before we got into cosplaying and stuff like that. Like these guys swear up and down that they met
real versions of
a character that they had created, like to a T, met the guy. So there's stuff like that. So I mean, that's like a big Grant Morrison thing with the Invisibles. Like the human mind has the Tolpa theory. It's just if you focus on something enough and believe in something enough, it'll come to our reality.
That's why I get nervous when I'm out here now.
Right, thinking all these thoughts.
Yeah, I'm always out here thinking of things and talking with people, and I'm like, that's part of why I didn't want to be in the house because I want to keep everything out of it here.
Right.
But like, I walk outside and I have a cornfield right next to me, like 15 feet away. I was like, what's going to come running out of the corn?
There's plenty of those.
Well, true story, like no bullshit. That's not what I'm about. But I was sitting out here the other day and I was recording someone else, and when I got done, I was editing. And while I'm editing, I hear something out here. And I don't know how to describe it, but it almost sounded like I thought it was maybe like the barn was settling, which it shouldn't be making noises, but like it was like a creaky noise. But it's like right outside this window. I was like, I don't want to fucking go in now because I don't want to go outside this door because I don't want to know what's out there making this noise. So I've been parking the vehicles next to it. I was like, well, it's got to go around the vehicles.
Right. I've got a little bit of leeway. Well, we were talking about how we're both paranoid people. I reading like stories and accounts and listening to accounts about people like having premonitions essentially, or just like hearing a voice in their head saying, stop, don't turn left, and then something horrific happening. I'm always worried that I'll hear something like that and I'll just chalk it up to me being paranoid and anxious, and
I'm not listening
I won't
to it.
trust that type of thing.
I've never had I know there's people that don't have like inner monologues. I've talked about that before, but like I hear myself thinking.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But I've never heard anyone else's voice ever come into my
head. I don't know if it's, I guess they are described as other voices.
Like you hear another voice. I've never had that. Like no one's,
I hear myself.
Like no one ever says, come in my head, hey, don't go in there. Yeah, like I might think, I probably shouldn't go in there.
Yeah, right.
But like I've never heard anything.
I'm sure it would be different if I experienced something like that, and I would probably be able to differentiate. But when I think about it, like I'm already darting my eyes everywhere and thinking of every horrible outcome that could ever be. So I don't know. I feel like
I've never been one to be afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
But
when you're immersed in this stuff.
Yeah. But nowadays, like when I have to go out back, like it gets really dark way out back. I was like, I've got a couple acres back there. There's no lights, and I have to go out there and make sure my animals are put up. I'm like,
and my rational brain knows that like everything's cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's always just
I'm not so much creeped out when it's not corn.
Yeah, right. When you can see
when there's no corn, I can see out there. But like when I'm surrounded by cornfields, so I was like, man, I've watched too many shows.
Yeah, right. Well, that's how I am with like true crime. Like I know better. Like, this is how X, Y, and Z happens. I'm not going to do that.
Right. No, I've said it several times on episodes, but like when we first moved in, it died, but we still have two goats, but like one of the goats that we had when we first moved in, it had the normal horns.
Oh yeah.
The one we have now has horns, but one of them broke, so both of them kind of go this way. So they're not like the straight horn. But when I went out there one night to make sure they got put up, because when we first bought the place, we were told that the coyotes were really
Oh,
bad.
yeah, sure.
So I wanted to make sure they got put in their barn. So I'm walking out there, and it just so happened to be a very bright moon. So everything was like, you could see a little bit better. And I didn't have the security light put up like I did now on their barn. So it was dark as shit. I'm walking out there, and I just see next to this tree, standing upright, looked like the depiction of what everyone says is Satan.
Oh, God.
Because it was standing on two legs, goat head, horns, and everything. I was like,
what the fuck is this?
and then I'm like, I realize it's the goat. The goat was chewing the bark on the tree,
It's reaching up it.
but it was standing on the edge of the tree.
Yeah.
And for me, just seeing it in the silhouette, I just like, yes, Satan.
Well, it's, yeah, like I said, I went on that like squatch hunt a couple months ago. As an adult man, I have never just like ran around in the woods in pitch black. I absolutely understand now how people can like churn their mind into a hysterical like episode, or thinking that they saw something or making something out of nothing. Just like, I don't know, the primal fear of being in the dark, or in the woods, or in the woods in the dark. Like,
I don't go in the woods in the daylight.
yeah,
Unless
exactly.
I might go disc golfing, but that's the extent of my experiences out in the woods. Like years ago, this was back when I was in high school, we went out to Okefenokee, but we didn't like the little teardrop. We went off in the woods and we hiked through the woods. And I don't know how long we walked for, but we walked so far to where I got the point. I was like, I don't know what time it is, because we didn't have phones back in those days, and no one.
Yeah.
We should probably get back before it gets dark and we never find our way back.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you tried to go out there recently?
No, it's been shut down.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
under construction for
that night when we
years
went
now.
out looking for the flyer and people, humanoid things, I drove down there, and it was completely, you can't get onto it anymore.
Which is strange. It's been, like I said, I think it's been years that it's been under construction or closed down.
Well, it's been closed down since they found the dead body.
Pulled the bodies out. So
Yeah, that's been, I think it was 2020. That's when
it's been a while. They've been convicted since.
Yeah, but
So
I think
it's been a while.
I think it's been closed for like since 2020 or 2019.
Yeah.
So I know it happened. They found the people in 2018. I think it was.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it happened in 2018, but then they convicted them.
I feel like there were stories about murders and bodies there
there's always
long
been
before that.
Yeah, there was. My mom, who's always lived around here, knew about Okefenokee. That's how I found out about it.
Right.
And I went out there and camped. I was like, why is everyone afraid of this place?
Other than it just being in the woods. Like,
Yeah, like
but also it's it's government land. Like, I don't know.
they never had any no trespassing signs though.
Right.
It's always weird because before you ever got to that area, there was a house. Like if you were coming from Peru, there was a house, and then there was the two pillars, and you knew where it was. Every time you get by that house, we call it the Hellhound. There's always a huge black dog come running out next to the car, and obviously it was someone's dog.
Yeah, right. But
it looked like a Great Dane. That's how big it was. It was just solid black. We never, its eyes would reflect like the headlights, but like it wasn't like the typical red-eyed hellhound chasing after you. But we were always prepared for it.
Yeah, it's a creepy.
We were always prepared after we went out there enough times, because those were our old roadie roads, and it would run out there, and my buddies in the back were like, "I'm gonna door bash it." It never happened, but I was always like, "I want you did somebody," because I was always the driver, because I'm the only one who ever had a vehicle.
Sure.
I was like, "Don't be bashing." I was like, "I don't want any dents in my doors." But I always look back now, like, man, it's so weird to think like how dumb I was.
Oh yeah, same.
As a kid, like,
We're
teenager,
bored. We're in Indiana.
Who knew that we were?
Can't drink yet.
Who knew we were in an area where there's going to be murders and bodies?
Yeah, there's plenty of horrific shit going on here.
I went out there with a paranormal group, and their meters were constantly jumping, and they made a flashlight turn on by itself to answer questions and everything. And I didn't.
Well, I live in a house that was built in 1867. Like, I figured this would be the place that I'll experience something. Nope, nothing.
We lived the house.
Too much love in this house. People, no tragedy, just regular folks living and dying here.
Before we moved here, we lived in a house in Converse that was built in the 1800s, and you'd have thought that would have been the place that had creepy stuff. This house was built in 1979, and it's the house with the creepy shit going on. Yeah. So
And believe me, the guy that lived there before us, he died in the kitchen. We've renovated everything, and he was a tinkerer. And I've cursed his name so many times in that house trying to get him, pull my hair, like fuck around with us. Nothing. No
Yeah.
unfinished business.
I
He's
feel like
cool.
when you wanted to have it, it never will.
That's the thing, and I can't like turn that off. And there's the I'll believe it when I see it like
Yeah.
mentality, but I think it's more of a I'll see it when I believe it type thing, and I can't make myself believe it without.
I will show you some stuff here when we get off air.
Okay.
But yeah, this house here, part of the reason I wanted to get out of the house is because some people try to convince me that what I do out here
Uh-huh.
is bringing stuff here.
Okay.
Claim-
Yeah, I had a lady at a event a couple weeks ago say that I have a demon attached to me, and then I was like, well, this is kind of weird. And then I heard that she was telling everybody they had demons attached to them.
That's because she wants money probably to get rid of the
Probably,
demon.
Yeah, exercise me on the fly.
Yeah. Yeah, I there's apparently those people too are grifting around these events so they
Oh,
can
yeah.
get the people and try and
Sure.
tell them that almost like the fortune tellers now, but
Yeah.
now they're the demon people.
I love I get so many like DM requests on Instagram of people like wanting to read my Akashic record. Like, are you familiar with the whole Akashic record idea?
A little bit. I see it get all the time. I don't go into any of that type of
Yeah.
stuff just because
Well, neither do I, but I just I was kind of following that as like it's the idea that every thought, every intention, every action, everything
is
ever
in there.
is in this cloud essentially. And that I was following it in the context of that's how they believe like savantism comes about. There's lots of like Mozart quotes and like Leonardo da Vinci drawing a bird, drawing a bird, drawing a bird, drawing a bird, draws a fucking helicopter out of nowhere, like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So I followed it in that way. But my whole thing is I get so many DMs of like these scammers or bots or something like talking about reading my Akashic record. If somebody could legitimately read the Akashic record, they wouldn't be DMing me on Instagram. They would be, winning the lottery and shit like that.
So a true story. You and I come from musical backgrounds.
Mhm.
The first time I ever seen that, I actually thought it was like a record label.
It's a sick name.
When I seen someone talk about the Akashic Records or whatever, I was like, "Is this like a new label?"
Oh yeah.
I was like,
They got scouts out here.
I was like, why are they like a record label, like in the like weird paranormal stuff?
Right.
No, when people were like, they were putting that shit out there, I was just like, that's where my mind first goes to is
Yeah.
like, that's the old band mentality is like, when you see records, I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh, great. Get to pay to be on this label.
right.
Sumerian.
Right. That's the true horror stories for anyone that
Really.
my other podcast, we haven't been doing it since January, but we did Dark Side of the Scene, and that typically was a lot of the stuff we'd hear on that
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Was people's bad experiences.
I can't remember there's one in particular. I can't remember what it's called, but the logo was an elephant with like plugs.
Oh, We Are Triumphant.
Triumphant. That's it. Yep. That's
Yeah.
the one I always think of when I think of scammy.
That was
record labels.
the
Vulture.
ones that dismissed the serpent word.
Yeah,
word of-
that's right. Yeah. Yikes.
Yeah. There's more about that I'll talk about off air.
That's
No.
But-
You want to let everyone know about where you're going to be at for some of these upcoming events?
Yeah. I'm off for a month. I'm doing prepping for Mothman Festival, which is September 20th and 21st in Point Pleasant, and it is a hell of a time every year. So I'm right next to the statue. If anybody that's listening is going to be there, I'm to the left of the statue, right against the museum wall. So
The statue
on
where
by.
everyone comes by and slaps the butt of.
yep, and also so many proposals.
In
I
front
feel
of
like it's every like 8 minutes I'll hear like a round of applause and it's somebody proposing in front of the Mothman.
The other
statue.
day, someone posted this, and I giggled because I'm immature. They took a sticker of what looked like a butthole and stuck it in between the cheeks of Mothman.
Finally.
So Mothman now had a butthole.
Yeah, we keep having these like waves of, they were leaving canned beans at its feet for a while, which was great because they would just give them to the, food pantry.
Right.
And then they were leaving Mountain Dew. And then now it's loose change and it's ass crack.
Yeah.
So,
Now it's a
and
little,
now it's butthole stickers.
yeah, now it's a sphincter sticker. But
But yeah, you can find me at Mothman Festival next month. And I think that's I wrap it up for the year. After that, I'm exhausted.
I didn't know if you're going to be down in Louisville for the.
I there every single event that I've wanted to do is on October 12th. Everybody's doing everything on October 12th, and I have a wedding to be at that weekend. So after Mothman, I'm taking a hiatus until Frogman Festival in Loveland in March.
Speaking of Frogman, you just did the artwork for a movie.
Yeah, and we're working on Frogman 2
Awesome.
right now. Have you seen the first one?
I have not yet.
I'm biased, but I think it's a lot of fun. And if they're able to pull off what is written for Frogman 2, it's going to be like a monumental, like cryptid installment.
Awesome. I've been wanting to watch Frogman, but I don't know if it's on any of the places.
It's streaming on Screambox. I think everywhere else you have to rent it.
Yeah.
But
I figured eventually it may be on Tubi or something.
Yeah,
but
eventually, I think, because it just came out in March, so
Yeah.
it's doing its runs, and we just released a Blu-ray, special edition Blu-ray for it that comes out next month, and we've been doing VHS releases because it's found footage. So
Right.
we're about to do our third wave of VHS.
I wish I still had a VCR.
Right, I had to dust mine off.
I used to have. I have no idea where the hell that thing is, but I had so
I'm
many
hoping they'll make a
videos on-
comeback. I hope it's like Records, and we'll start getting, indie VHS releases.
Most of my monster movie stuff were all VHS because I'm a product of the 80s, the early 80s.
I love physical media. I have to have,
So for me, even today, like I struggle because I used to have bunches and bunches of CDs. Like that's how I listened to music.
Yeah,
And
right.
everyone's like, nowadays it's just on your phone. And
Yeah.
like, even before like I started this show, I never listened to podcasts.
Yeah.
Like I had no interest in it. I literally thought doing a podcast was like people just talking about whatever. And I thought when I made up this idea during lockdown era that this was going to be like a great thing, no one did it.
It is oversaturated.
And now it's like I found out like everyone friggin' does it.
I wanted to do a podcast, and then I started to read the room. I was like, what the hell am I gonna,
Right.
be able to offer that somebody else isn't already doing?
I don't know, but I did notice the other day, and I don't know how accurate this thing is, but everyone judges podcasts by listen notes, which is like where they rank their stuff at. I was like, I'm ranked top 3% of all
Hell
podcasts.
yeah.
I was like, hell yeah.
Is that on Spotify or is it like
It's
down the
global.
line? Oh, awesome.
Global. So according to, I don't know how they make their numbers.
That's what I was thinking too. But
It's
pat on the back's a pat on the back.
Yeah, like I've been in the top 5% since December
Okay.
of last
you're
year.
right
Now I'm at 3%. I was
Well,
like,
you have a
"Huh?"
good name,
Well, that's what's funny. Like, and people get mad at this name because it says I make fun of people with it.
Oh, that's just
I was like, no, if you listen to what we talk about, literally, I have the umbrella to talk about anything.
yeah. I mean, well, it's like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, Tinfoil Tales is pretty all encompassing, but
Like,
I don't think it's disparaging. I think even ufologists back in the day, that was like that's the thing. It's a stereotype or
no,
it's a trope for a reason.
like for me, like the concept is I can talk about conspiracies. I can talk about aliens.
Yeah.
I can talk about cryptids. I can talk about
Right. It's
paranormal.
pretty
Like
fluid. Yeah,
it's all
encompassing.
right. What am I supposed to call it? Like fringe tales?
Yeah, right. Now that would be
Yeah.
yeah.
But I don't know. For some reason, I didn't know that there was a podcast. I should have thought about it. But like Tinfoil Hat is a huge with Sam Tripoli is like a huge conspiracy podcast.
Right.
I didn't do any research
Yeah, sure.
when I made this show name or when I
mean-
made the show. I was like, I'm just doing a podcast because I have recording stuff and I don't have a band.
Right. Yeah. It works.
So here I am. I was like, I have all this. This was from recording all this stuff. This was from the band stuff. Like I had all this stuff for band.
Makes sense.
And I wasn't doing a band. I was like, so I'm gonna do a podcast. I actually talk with Matt Knapp quite a bit from Bigfoot Crossroads, and I was telling him about like why he's basically said something about how I'm like the most fucked up type of a podcaster because I'm not a podcast. Like I literally I just did it because I had nothing else to do. So like I just decided to make a podcast, and here I am. I was like, yeah, well,
It works.
Yeah.
You got it.
I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
But do you want to let anyone know where they can find your artworks and everything at too?
Yeah, I mostly operate out of Instagram. Twitter freaks me out, and Facebook is way too
Censored.
But just I don't know.
No, they don't.
The interface for Facebook isn't kind to artists. It's
Right.
like Instagram's starting to get to the point where it's not kind to artists, and then TikTok is way too much of a fucking trip. That
I
I'm
don't
not
even
doing
mess
that.
with TikTok. I have
So,
one. I don't even know how
yeah.
to mess with it.
But you can find me on Instagram at Easton Hawk Illustration.
I will put that in the show notes for everyone to check it out. If anyone, again, like I said, if you look at any of the pictures I've posted or anything for like live videos, which I don't really have live videos that often unless I do a live stream, you can see all the artwork behind me. But no, you were like my favorite cryptid artist. So it's cool that you are
so close.
Close. Yeah. And we knew each other before any of this.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think you were like, I think I first met you at a show probably like,
back when I was living in Kokomo.
Yeah.
I was probably in high school.
I think you were, because
to my dismay was...
You were friends with, was it Kyle?
Yeah, Kyle Harris.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Straight from Daylight Boys.
Right. Yeah, we played at his house.
Oh yeah, Foster House.
Yep.
Yeah.
We played there in like 2010, I think. Mm-hmm. So good times.
Yeah, it's funny that now we're both in the same field technically.
Yeah. I don't it's strange for me. I know people are like, dude, shut up. But like, I don't even consider myself a podcaster because it's not anything I ever really set out to do.
Right. It's just, I don't know. It's an alternative radio show.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I'm weird.
It works.
Like for me, I was like, I miss music.
Oh yeah. I'm back and forth. After the pandemic, when everything slowed down, I realized how much I love not tearing down drums and setting up drums and traveling and setting up drums and tearing down drums and then driving home and doing it over and over and over again.
And that is why we don't have a band anymore, because of a drummer. We didn't have a drummer anymore.
Well, I went from being the like stereotypical Hard Times drummer that's in like 6 different bands,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm avoiding people that I play music with because I have time for one hobby, and I'm obviously going to choose the hobby that makes me money and I actually enjoy. So I'm sure I'll get the itch to play again at some point, but
the other point is there is no money in playing music.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. There's barely money in making cryptid art, but at least it's...
Everyone thinks that you make money in podcasting. I was like, no.
Make a podcast then.
Yeah, make a podcast. You'll see if you make money.
Yeah, right. It's like music. You invest thousands of dollars into, making $100.
And now thousands of dollars in security. Yeah, right. But no, it's they're money pits. Hobbies are money pits.
Oh yeah.
So,
but it's a good way to bide your time.
Right. It's either that or go crazy.
Yeah, right. We're on our way.
Well, Easton.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come ramble in your shed for a couple hours.
Right. It's I enjoy being able to actually talk with someone in person now.
Oh,
like
yeah.
The very first episode I ever recorded was in person with my friend Ed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had one other interview with my friend Dalton. And then other than that, everything's just been remote.
Right. Which I think is also why we haven't been able to sync up, because if I'm at home, there's 1,000 other things I need to do.
On.
And, I have to put my daughter back in bed 8 times every night. And, it's just hard to lock down.
That's why I also wanted to get out of the house, because my kids sleep downstairs where I was recording. And I'm right outside my son's door. Right. And he's like, hears me talking about stuff. And like,
earshot.
I was like, I don't want to talk
about dog, man.
Yeah, I'm giving him nightmares, and he's thinking aliens are going to come abduct him or some craziness. So it's just like, whatever. But
yeah, this is fun. It's nice to do this in person. So,
yeah.
But yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep, thank you. And for anyone listening, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to us ramble for about 2 hours. But hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we'll check you out on the next one. And that's the show, everyone. I really hope you guys enjoyed the conversations. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com or go to the contact section of tinfoiltales.com. Just get your message to me. We'll get something scheduled for a future episode. And just remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.
Tinfoil Tales in the headphones. Yeah, it's time to rock. Got a story about a cryptid creature. Let's take a walk. Bigfoot, dogman, they're out there in the dark. But the truth is out there like an alien spark. UFO sightings got the whole world shook. Conspiracies unfold like a story in a book. Media control, trying to keep us trying to keep us blind, but I won't be fooled, gonna use my own mind. In history, they don't want us to know the secrets they're hiding, the truth they won't show. Domino society, they keep us in chains.